So, right before I was going to make this video, my computer just gave up. Which means that for this video specifically, I didn't have any of my files and I had to do everything from scratch. Everything seems to be fine now, but just know that this issue made it so that this video is going to be on a lower budget, which will be apparent in just a moment. But regardless, I hope you enjoy it. Ah yes, Valentine's Day. The day some people get to enjoy their yearly decent dinner, and the rest can enjoy discounted chocolate over the following days. Originally, I had a different plan with this video. To celebrate this day, I wanted to go to a much darker place on the internet. But as you likely heard, the circumstances made it so that we are on a tight budget. And so, without further ado, let's have a look at a different topic that will still celebrate the occasion. The canon love stories surrounding the Crownguard family. When someone mentions the name Crownguard, you probably think of Garen and Lux. If you are thinking about Jarvan, you were wrong. He is from House Lightshield. But regardless, somehow, all members of this big family are tangled in strange relationships. And just to prove the point, let's start with the two everyone knows about. Garen probably got into the most infamous relationship. Garen and Katarina are a pair that has been teased ever since the old Journals of Justice. But there it was mostly addressed as a side joke. You know, two people who are sworn enemies, but every now and then they think about what if? Well, later this pair started appearing in some of their promotional art too. And yet, even after the lore of League of Legends was restarted, none of this was ever mentioned in either of their stories. Things got more peculiar after the game got some interactions referencing them as well, mainly after the release of Illaoi.
Honor, duty, what your heart demands is all that matters.
People really started wondering if the Garen and Katarina ship was canon. And finally, we got the answer when Riot updated Garen's lore. There it was explained that Garen once went on a mission, where his entire squad got killed, and he got locked in a fight with Katarina for hours. People described the fight as a crazy dance of blades. But regardless, days later, Garen was the only one who returned home. And of course, his fellow soldiers started speculating that the reason why Garen survived was because he, in fact, found an interest in his enemy. And so, finally, the relationship between Garen and Katarina was at least canonically teased. However, then Silas arrived, and Garen got an entire new storyline regarding how he found out his sister was a mage. So suddenly, the entire Katarina plot point didn't fit his lore direction anymore. So now, if you go to his universe and check his story, you may notice that there is not a single mention of Garen ever meeting Katarina. And from Katarina's point of view, Garen isn't mentioned either. But thankfully, this relationship is kept canon through Legends of Runeterra.
You must be Garen.
And I have never seen you before.
So even though the mention of their encounter was removed, the two still definitely met, and Riot may do something with them in the future.
Demacia.
Remember that at one point, Riot was even considering a movie about the two. But that's really where their relationship ended. So now, since we already mentioned how Lux ruined Garen's canonical relationship, let's talk about her now. While Lux may not necessarily have a canon relationship with anyone, she does have her fair share of teases. The first one to ever appear was her potential relationship with Ezreal. And out of all the places and champions, it was the most romantic case of all. It was teased in a forum post, which was teasing the relationship of Aatrox.
They will call me villain. Come.
There, a Rioter played the role of Ezreal, and with the players, he discussed who might be this mysterious figure. But at one point, someone on the forums pointed out that on Ezreal's table, he had a picture of him with Lux. After this, in character, the Rioter playing Ezreal hit the note. And that's how the relationship between the two started. Well, in reality, the two were never mentioned again, all the way until Ezreal was reworked. That's when we learned about Jarvan Lightfeather, who is Ezreal. It was never directly confirmed, but it seems like Ezreal is using this name in Demacia to hide his real identity from the Mageseekers. But funnily enough, even though this relationship started with the two already knowing each other, it seems like in the current story, the two have met, but either Lux doesn't remember it, or Ezreal was just so good at pretending to be someone else that Lux didn't even know it was him. There is also the chance that Ezreal was so forgettable that Lux forgot about him. But either way, right now, it doesn't seem like Riot wants to push their story forward. So, let's wait and see if Project F changes that. But Ezreal isn't the only relationship Lux has. There is also the one with Sylas. You see, throughout Sylas's time in the Mageseeker compound, Lux kept visiting his cell, and over time she and Sylas became friends. Sylas saw that Lux was a mage, he promised not to tell anyone, and he even taught Lux how to control her magic. In return, all he wanted were some books from the Mageseeker's library. Unfortunately for Lux, that's how he learned about how Patricide works, and that's how he turned the material into a weapon that helped him escape. Needless to say, that's the exact point when their relationship ended. But this entire Sylas affair pushed another relationship into being canon. I know Jarvan isn't directly related to the Crownguard family, but he could have been. You see, after Garen and his aunt Diana discussed how problematic it is that Lux is a mage, they came to the conclusion that in order to protect her and the entire Crownguard family from the Mageseekers, Lux would need to get into untouchable position, which meant that Jarvan would have to marry her. And so, just like that, if you go back to the Lux comic, you may remember a scene where Garen was asking Jarvan if he would like to marry his sister. But what is that? Jarvan mentioned that even though he met hundreds of potential brides, alas, none of them were her? Now at the time, this scene was simply talking about how Jarvan wants to find the right one. But in reality, he was comparing all the brides to someone he already fell in love with. And that someone was mentioned later. After Sylas broke into the main palace and captured the prince, Jarvan confessed that he even loved someone not too different from the mages. And by this, because it is someone similar to the mages but not exactly them, he is of course likely referring to Shyvana. So even though Jarvan did not end up being wed to Lux, and he most likely won't be because Lux fled, there is the chance that in the future, Prince Jarvan might marry a half-dragon. Now with all of the main characters mentioned, let's now have a look at some of the side characters from the Crownguard family. Of course, the parents of the two siblings were Peter and Agatha Crownguard. Of course, we don't even have to mention that these two were together, unless they were brought to the family by a stork. But Peter's sister, Diana Crownguard, got a unique relationship of her own. In the Garen novel, it was revealed that Diana's husband was Lord Eldred, who was the leader of the Mageseekers. If anything, the two were married because of political reasons. And so, you can already guess that it is not exactly a romantic relationship. In fact, after each of their counselings, the two just look at each other and walk their separate ways. I don't blame them. Being married to the Lord of the Mageseekers would be bad on its own, but it's worse if you know that one of your family members is a mage. So far, none of these relationships really had a happy ending, or an ending at all. And that's what our last character is going to fix. King Jarvan III. King Jarvan became the king during the times when Demacia faced many enemies beyond their borders, but even within the nation, some houses turned against each other in a fight to gain the king's favor. So in order to stop this, King Jarvan announced that he would marry Lady Catherine, who became beloved by the people, and she even got her own garden. The bells of the great city rang for a day and night in celebration, and by year's end came the announcement that the royal couple were expecting their first son, Jarvan IV. But all joy was forgotten when Lady Catherine died in childbirth. Yeah, I didn't say the story would have a happy ending, I just told you it would at least have some ending. And I'm pretty sure we don't have to go through the entire story, because you know what the definitive ending looks like. So here we have it, the Crownguard relatives. We have Garen, who is into his nation's enemy, Lux, who is into her nation's enemy, and perhaps a mage who can be considered her nation's enemy, their aunt, Diana, who is married to someone supporting an internal national enemy, and their king, who is in love with the nation's enemy, and his parents, who were the only ones in a happy relationship. So of course, they had to tragically die. So overall, I know that Demacians being a bunch of hypocrites was a joke, but this is going too far. I would love to go to the simpler times, when Riot just took two characters and put them next to each other. And even if Riot didn't do it, the community certainly did.